One thing I really like about this bank is how much everyone genuinely cares about their customers and about the community and about each other. Always trying to put ourselves in the customer's place. What would I expect if I were the customer? And then we try to take it up a few notches from there. And it's kind of like being part of the family when you're banking with us.
I'll call this work session to order. And I'll immediately turn it over to our city manager for perusal of the agenda.
Here we'll do the agenda, come back, cover a couple just kind of quick announcements in the open session, and then we'll request a closed session. First item, approval of the minutes of last week's meeting. Good.
It kind of threw me because every time it referred to me as Mayor Pro 10 cents. And I was thinking they called me 10 cents.
Pro 10 cents.
Pro 10 cents.
That's good, Mayor. Let's move right on down the road here. Mr. Shaw. Item number 2, Ordinance 7394. This is the request for the specific use permit for the Type A manufactured home. We originally considered this 2 weeks ago, at which time we did a full briefing. The commission discussed and had it tabled to a date certain, such date being today. I believe that the questions the mayor had were answered, and the item is back on the agenda for your discussion and consideration.
What was Mayor's specific question?
The fit of this into that overall area out there. What may or may not ever develop. The railroad track to the west, 2 roads to the east and to the north.
And the Plains take off right.
The Plains take off immediately to the east.
Predominantly, that is predominant.
I have a sense that the developer or the owner of most of this property here, if there was an intent to do a housing project, whatever that is, there was probably always started.
Well, he's notified.
Yeah. I mean,
nobody protested or nobody had any objections or
Nobody had any negative comments. There's one major property owner who does do residential development, and there may or may not be plans in the future for residential development here. So that's one thing. I mean, the major property owner who sold this property, he may or may not develop the remainder of this property as a residential subdivision. But I guess the best way that I would sum it up, what we talked about last week, is I think the concerns were, would this be setting a precedent that would have a negative impact on possible residential subdivisions in the future? And I believe, first of all, looking at the overall area, when you have, this isn't a full section, but it's probably 2/3 of the section. And probably almost half of that is zoned industrial along the railroad track. North of this, across the 46, is zoned industrial. To the south is zoned industrial. It has limited access. Across the street to the east is outside city limits, and you already have what's going on there. So you've got some real issues just about this being conducive for residential development anyway, but if you do your SWOT analysis on it, it does have an opportunity associated with it, in that it is open and it's under one ownership. So I think that's why staff, if this was a smaller lot, single wide, I really do think that the size of the lot and the type of manufactured home being proposed, because once it's on the foundation, it is a home. And I think if you have an issue with the mobile home, if you would allow a site-built home or a stick-built home on this lot, I think you'd be hard-pressed to are you not allowing double-wide manufactured housing? And I think that as long as staff, and what we would do, and what we will do, is we won't let development occur like it's occurred across the street where you have one major property owner or one property owner that has a deep lot and he wants to start making a little money, and so they start selling off little pieces behind their lot, and then you're stuck with having these little access easements everywhere, and then you have platting problems, and you have addressing problems, all those kinds of things. We would not allow that, and so if this did develop, all you would do is have frontage, the properties that have frontage, and we would make sure that if something were to occur behind here, it still has the opportunity to occur behind these homes.
But am I right, and you brought this up last time, that if we were going to follow our strategic plan, it would be the frontage is supposed to be retail, right, or large, like large box or some kind of retail on the front, and then we move back into transitional and housing?
Well, really, in this area, if you're not on like a corridor like Sonsi is a little unique, and then that's the loop, and you see retail zoning all the way down that. Typically on our sections, we try to follow the neighborhood unit concept where you have non-residential developments on the corners, and then residential, and you can transition from high density residential to lower density, but we try to avoid the strip retail development as a practical matter. So yeah, you could still look for non-residential development on the corners here, but we would probably recommend to stay agriculture until such time that it maybe does develop into something higher density residential. Or this probably what's going to happen is this probably could develop into just a larger lot, rural type estate development.
And that's a concept that is brought forth in the rural style subdivisions. Okay. Item number 3, appointments. We have 3 up today. In the hospital district, as you know, Ms. Dove has tendered her resignation. We have the name, and I apologize in advance if I can't pronounce this correctly, but Dr. Rakshanda Raman. Take your stay that close.
Yeah, that's good. I think I'll just say Dr. Raman.
This is like a line.
Yeah.
Next one is your Comprehensive Plan Implementation Advisory Committee. Of course, Mr. Church resigned and has taken his seat on the Potter County Commissioners Court. We have a suggested name who is willing to serve should you choose, and that's Mr. Steve Rogers. Now, Mr. Rogers is on the Traffic Commission as well, but is willing to fill this role.
So he's going to fill both? Okay.
One of your honored Emerald 101 graduates. And then the Texas Panhandle Centers suggests Ms. Bryan for a reappointment. Moving on to the consent agenda. Consent item A, prefabricated restroom buildings. This will be 3 of them: the Emerald Athletic Complex, Seaview Park, and Greenway Park. And I believe we have a typical photograph of one in there. These were, we bounced back and forth from the group of purchase these off of one of the cooperative purchasing contracts and try to follow that next year and get them and see what kind of competition we can generate. We generated some competition this time, and the price went down.
Huge difference in the fields. Do you know these people?
This is who normally provides them. I would suggest that, if not all, the vast majority of these that we own come from this company.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. We bought 2 years ago. We did 20 of them.
Yeah.
With that
And a
CO
little
money.
farther to go than that, but yeah.
On the Rock Party Stop Force, something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do. And most of the school park sites that ended up with new restrooms because of that CO are those. They're pretty handy. Rod and his staff basically will have a slab prepared with the utilities stubbed out. These come in on a truck and a crane, so that sets them down. Connections are made when you're done. Very quick.
It's one of those constant classes, and it's a 3.5-mile trail.
They've had very good luck. They're durable. The users can't damage those near as easily as they can some of the other ones.
Did they just hose them out? Did they come in and hose them out?
Power wash them out. Yeah. Stainless steel inside, but we never hose them out.
There's one at Elwood, and then there's one of the old brick built ones at Elwood. One's in, the new one's in the southwest corner.
The ones on the east side.
Over by the
Senior Park.
Okay.
And there, and the substation is also a CXT product that kind of fabricated some different uses.
Has a roll up. Okay. Item B, open horizontal breathing air compressors. Also a photograph. These are the devices that fill the SCBA bottles for the fire pump. An ATM on it?
It's like an ATM.
Not impossible.
Pretty sure if
Big
it's,
money drawer.
well, that could be a way to save money in the fire department budget. Put a quarter in to have your bottle filled. Pretty high pressure. Those compress well over 2,000 psi. You get those bottles ready.
Is that station number 13?
It should be station 13, which is under construction.
So, in that sense, equipment from these locations will be moved to fire training facility and station 13.
13 at John's Tip Park. And if you haven't been by there, drive by. Quite a bit of activity. Item C, change order for your Hillside Road project. This piece is actually on the part of that that's called 58, which is the Hillside Road project. And if you would, flip over. Mark and his group tried to kind of give us a representation. When this was initially excavated, this project, we're taking out the roadway, we're taking out the base and the subgrade, and then we start back up. When they initially did that, this was all saturated. We did an earlier change order to continue to excavate, and basically they never got out of the water or the wet material. The circles are drawing your attention to where there's cracks you can see in what would be the north half of that roadway. And you can see where the dirt's wet. You see the two different colors of the dirt. They've been working on this marsh trying to de-water for about 2 months. Yes. We're not having the success that we want, and when we come back to this, we've got to have the best chance we can give it of this road holding up. So the change order is for a textile product that will go down and then the base be built up on top of this.
Which will separate the wet from the dry.
And provide, just it spreads the loads across larger areas. It provides stability, keeps it from squishing for a non-technical term.
Does moisture resistance even in here for so long?
That's what we believe is that these cracks have been open long enough that they've gotten enough moisture in it that the soil below it has just gotten so saturated.
We have gone through with the utilities department. We spent significant time trying to find out do we have a water leak.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
From the plumbing over here, perhaps.
From the irrigation system over there.
It's not underground, it's from above ground.
The best that we can tell. TxDOT has used this product, and I think it's actually on Western in some portions.
From Wolf Lane to 34th Street has the same similar product.
And it's held up and worked. So we need to bring this to you and see if we can get this done.
what do we do about, like the portion this car is driving on?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to carry that out also?
Yes, sir. That is phase 4 project. The part that's excavated at the bottom is phase 3.
Okay.
We're ran into it. We expect to have the same problem on phase 4 because, as you can see, the cracks extend across that. So the change order actually includes phase 4. It's enough material to do phase 3 and phase 4. If for some reason when we get into phase 4 it's not as we expect, we just won't use.
The change order down the quantity.
Right.
And Mark, this is enough to carry you around about to where the YMCA is? Is that?
Yes, it stretches from just about from the intersection at Western east to the first driveway at the YMCA ball field. What we think part of the problem is this area had to be built up to match the elevation that Western is at, and the material came out at Playa Lake over there, and it's just not very good material, and so when that water starts seeping down through it, it's clay, and it just soaks that water up.
Mark, your
That
asphalt
asphalt's about
section
8 inches on that. We're not putting back as much asphalt when we go back because we actually believe that the thickness of the asphalt is what caused some of the cracking that we have out there. It's the same pavement design as 34th Street between Coulter and Sonsi, and you all know what kind of cracks we have out there. And we think that it just makes it kind of acts as like concrete pavement, and it gets stiff enough that it causes cracks about every 30 feet or so. It was just it's kind of a flaw in the design. So we will use a little bit different. When we go back, the asphalt will be more flexible. It won't be as rigid as this is.
kind of a reminder back to last fall, some of the motion was some of the money that's become available to us through TxDOT. The money that was going to South Coulter, south of the loop, is going to come over and try to finish the 58th reconstruction. This project goes from originally Bell Street to Georgia. Take that funding in lieu of losing it and use that TxDOT money to go from Georgia out to Washington, finish that. So you'll have a complete rebuild section from Washington west all the way back across town. We have budgeted in the current CIP the money to do Georgia to Washington. We'll instead move it over and pick up 34th, which is the next one on our list of major reconstructs. So this year we'll get two for the price of one, in effect.
Good.
Item B, lease approval on the Mary E. Bivens building, and this is an opportunity for Center City of Amarillo to move up to the front of the building for the space formerly held by the Amarillo Symphony.
How much? When I was reading through this, I didn't know how much more that was going to be than what they're already paying.
They're paying rent now to
the chamber. It's a
They
sublease.
lease 2 offices from the chamber, and they're going to get space in the basement, and that's what they currently aren't leasing. Otherwise, the rent is relatively simple. Their rent's going to go up about $500 a month, but their board approved that.
I probably should know, but where's the symphony going?
Over here.
They went to the 7th floor of the
Amarillo building.
I know.
And they're out. They've already had their opening over there.
It's been out for 3 or 4 months.
Item number 5 will be our presentation on the blizzard. Kind of a more detailed look at what you saw last week. There will be a large number of city employees that are here.
Good.
Extremely excited about the opportunities. So when we go out there, if it appears the room is overflowing, it likely will be. We ended up tallying just a little bit over 500 city staff that were directly involved in the response and the recovery. We'll show some of the numbers that go with that today. You'll see the division directors, the department heads, and then in many cases supervisors and actually, the line crews that were out doing it. So I think it'll be neat, and some of the pictures I think will surprise you.
Now they get to work on potholes.
I was just going to ask when we're talking about this asphalt stuff about potholes.
And you've probably noticed the...
I've got a list.
Let us have them. Snow is great for a lot of things. Snow also has a unique ability of growing potholes, and it also grows orange road cones. There's quite a few of them around town that have begun to grow out of potholes. As we find others, we'll mark those and then get on.
Good
quick
little pretty
as we
birds,
can.
the orange cone.
The orange cone?
Okay.
Well, we like to say that's progress. Any questions on the agenda?
Sure.
Mayor, if I could, I'd like to get on the front page, item B10, your 83rd legislative session. Just give you a quick update. Some action that's going to go on tomorrow. You'll recall in January, City Commission considered and approved a resolution to oppose efforts to take municipalities in Texas out of the realm of rate making, or probably we call primary jurisdiction. Your opportunity on a regulated utility such as Atmos or Xcel Energy is ready for a rate increase to bring that first to this body, to allow you and the other elected bodies from across whatever the service region might be to review that, to engage your consultants, your experts, and in effect, rather than acting as merely the City of Amarillo, who is one customer, you act on behalf of the entirety of the customer base in your community. We knew at that time that there was a report, an interim report from State Affairs Committee in the House that led us to believe there would be a move to take that rate-making authority away from you and to take you out of the original jurisdiction. Those bills were ultimately filed. Two of them, House Bill 1148 and House Bill 1149. Those bills are up for their first hearing tomorrow at the House State Affairs Committee. The author of both of those bills sits on that committee. Patricia Harless. Houston. Now, these are Centerport energy bills. I don't know the details of what prompted them. But let me give you an example of something that I've never seen this before in the legislature. One of those bills has language in it that says a regulated utility can step out of that original jurisdiction merely by serving that jurisdiction notice that they're no longer a country. So, at least in my mind, there's a logical disconnect there. I'm regulated. I must be regulated for a reason and a purpose. But I have the ability to step out of that merely by saying, you know what, I'm out of that. And what this would do then is put it all back to the Railroad Commission or the Public Utility Commission. And you well know, the City of Amarillo and their ratepayers, they don't feel have been served well by actions of the Railroad Commission. We've been very vigorous and active in pursuing that. The bill's posted late Friday. They'll be up tomorrow. We're very fortunate. Representative Smithy is still on State Affairs. We've been in direct contact with he in his office on numerous occasions, as recently as yesterday afternoon, expressing the City of Amarillo is on record. That's the resolution you have in your hands. And in our mind, there's nothing that can be done to make either of these two bills acceptable. The bills have a penalty now. Basically, that if you did choose to intervene, your expenses can never be recovered. Today, that's an important check and balance that goes into a rate-making process. It's not that rate increases are never justified. It certainly can be. No different than us or any other business. Cost increases merit rate increases. But when you no longer have that primary check in place, or you instead punish the group of elected officials who chose to do that, you don't have that. Amarillo's standing, and any other city standing in these cases moving forward, would be merely as representing yourself as a customer. And we're a large customer, mate. No mistake about it. You pay over $2 million a year just for one of your well bills in electricity. So we're a customer. But that's still not as important as representing the approximately 70,000 households in your community.
Well, plus it's the consequences of it are removing local control.
That's exactly what this does.
Well, and it removes it so far from the voting public because the railroad commission is appointed, not even elected. At least PUC is elected.
Other way.
Oh, the other way around.
Yeah,
Oh,
the railroad is elected.
Okay.
Guess where they get all their money from?
Yeah, exactly.
And also, well, their argument is that, well, all this unnecessary money is spent by the utility and by the public when it does for the survey. And plus, besides, the PUC has a consumer affairs division looking at this in reality.
Yes.
I don't think
They're not really
they've ever won a case.
We've been in contact with Atlas Energy. They are not supporting these bills. Haven't had a chance to follow up with Excel, but I have no indication whatsoever that they're supporting these bills. Have you heard back?
Yes, they're in the same posture as Atlas. They're not actively supporting it. Of course, if it falls their way, they're happy, but
They're not going to step into the fray.
CenterPoint.
You know, it's one of those cases where maybe in one area of the state, not saying this is a fact, but maybe there's an area of the state where cities and utility companies are more litigious. But that's certainly not the case for us out here in West Texas. We have been able to settle the vast majority of our cases. Our appeal to the Railroad Commission in this last rate case was the first time we had gone full board appeal in 15 years. Yeah, a long time. And so, and that's reflected in what? Some of the lowest utility rates in the entire state are here in West Texas, Amarillo. Gas, electric, they're among the lowest in the state. And we work with our utility companies. And I don't know what's happening in Houston and CenterPoint, but it must not be good.
Some of the deregulated electric markets, that did not bring rate relief to consumers.
It's the opposite.
In fact, it was just the opposite. Consumer bills rose by 40% plus because the traditional rate making turned itself over on its head. Generally, your big base customers, in effect, are what's covering the base expenses of the utility and the residential consumer benefits. The deregulated markets, the general sense of that went the other way. It was easier if I were an electric provider to go to 1, 2, 3 large consumers and bargain for their business and then push the cost I didn't get back to the other side. Another reason the city of Amarillo is historically opposed being deregulated. It's us and a small chunk over kind of in the Texarkana area. It's about all that's left is El Paso.
Right down by Beaumont. It's a water in deep southeast Texas.
Okay.
It's a corner.
So the majority of the Texas consumers are in the deregulated electric market, and the rates are substantially higher than yours are here. And we're in the midst of an electric rate case.
Okay.
So,
Any other bills that we need to be?
the most pressing ones are those two, and again, those are coming up tomorrow.
For hearing.
For hearing.
So the deregulated markets, are they going to be online that this is going to happen?
This is somehow
Going to benefit them.
There is a corner I know, because when you look at the map, it's Amarillo, SPS is the big area. You've got that little area around Tyler, and there's a little piece.
The Golden Triangle.
Just a little somewhere over there.
Your largest refineries in the state of Texas are in the Beaumont corridor.
Yeah.
It's not surprising that someone from Houston is bringing us stuff.
I think what it does, again, remember they're not just like it for gas also. They have a gas unit. So this bill as filed is aimed at the Railroad Commission jurisdiction, but it just makes a motion in a second to apply it also to electric rate cases. That's the concern of our attorney in Austin pretty early. This is just the nose of the camel
Under the tent.
Under the tent. It's filed as a gas bill, but it can easily be amended to also include electric utility rates.
At 12:30 at night.
They're inexorably linked because in the majority of the state, it's not fair. In the rest of the state, a large part of the power of electric generation is natural gas. And still have substantial coal generation up here. It's exciting. The legislative work will get busier and busier. Filing ends this Friday.
So soon?
The bill numbers are still surprisingly low. Volume's been down at the ledge now. They'll probably catch up.
Because they're working on small finance or what?
Home operation.
That's right, and a bunch of freshmen. They're probably hanging on to their mentors to see what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, Senate bills are just now in the low 1,000s. The House by now normally would be in that 4,000 or 5,000 range. So, you don't know.
Well, maybe some of them will get out of committee then and get on the calendar.
Some of them, we have the TMRS bill, and of course we've sent you resolutions on the payday lending, and you saw where some bills have been filed.
Right.
Craddock did the texting too?
Craddock filed a texting bill. There's two others that are not Craddock bills that have also been filed. And then I think Ms. Matthews with the Impact Futures Group is down there actually this week. I'm looking on there's some betting around this stuff. Mayor, if we could, we'd ask for a closed session now.
Yes. I'll call a closed session pursuant to following sections of